Years ago, back when I was averaging right around $35,000 of premium per month, all final expense life insurance sales. Now, back at that point, it was the hardest thing that I had ever done. And the good news is that a talented producer, a true professional salesperson, can write just as much business today without having to go through some of the hardships that I had to deal with. I'm Doug Massey, and before I share what I had to do as a top producer, please like this video and subscribe if you're new. We're putting out new insurance sales content and final expense sales training videos like pretty much every week. The truth of the matter is, without my appointment setter, there's no way that I would have written all of that business, broken all those records, and had the level of success that I had actually achieved back when I was actively selling life insurance and final expense insurance. So if you're hoping to sell final expense at a high level on a face-to-face basis, belly to belly, that's the first thing that you're gonna need. And yes, I did go through several appointment setters, like a bunch of them, before I found my gal. The second thing that I had and that you'll need to do is, well, before I share that, if you'd like a copy of our appointment setting super file, which has some different scripts for setting appointments with different types of leads, just stick around till the end of the video and I'm gonna show you how to get this dude for yourself. The second thing that I had, and this is the confession part, is, well, I had one, the best leads that you could get, which thankfully our agents have access to today. And two, I had a lot of them, like a bunch of them, all fresh every single week. And here's the part that your typical insurance agent can't seem to wrap their mind around. The truth is, I spent right around $2,000 per week, every week on leads, week in, week out. Even when I was on vacation, I made sure I had fresh leads, and then I just worked the extra leads later. And this went on year after year. That's my confession. And that's what it takes today too, if you expect to earn around $200,000 per year. Understand, guys, when I got into final expense sales, I was already a talented producer with life insurance sales experience. I had already been trained and I was pretty good. I knew that I had the talent and the skill set to sell at an abnormally high level. I just wasn't sure that I actually had the work ethic, which was always my Achilles heel. Another confession. Guys, believe it or not, just like most people, my human nature is to be lazy. We as humans naturally want to go the path of least resistance. However, if you want to be a top earner, you have to figure out a way to get past that weak mindset and push yourself to do what most people will not do. And here's what my typical work week was like. My setter would be calling through the leads over and over and over on Friday and Saturday to book up my Monday. Now, keep in mind that I was traveling throughout the state of Florida, working my most productive counties, they were tried and true, and cities, and working like a combination of both rural and urban areas. Like I said, these areas I learned which ones were better through time. We lived like right on that Miami-Dade / Broward County border. Actually one of the worst areas to sell final expense life insurance in the country in. So travel was mandatory. Sunday night, I would spend like an hour or so preparing for Monday. I'd print out my leads, print out my appointments, then I would put all the addresses into the GPS in the order of the appointments, one by one. Some addresses don't come up on the GPS, so I learned to map out my day ahead of time and not to do it like on the fly in the car. That's a big fail. You know, it really would have been. And I learned the hard way, it was. Preparation was and is key. Monday morning, I'm up by 5 a.m. out of the door by 6, and depending on how far, the area was that I would be working that day, I would have appointments set up as early as like 8 a.m. Yeah, believe it or not, I started as early as I could. If I didn't have multiple sales by lunchtime, I'd be pissed. And really, this is how a producer thinks. You have certain expectations. For the first few hours, I expect to make a couple sales. Most of the areas that I sold in were like, I hate to say it, they were far. They were 2 to 3 hours away. So I could do a long day and then drive home. However, there were certain areas that were a little bit further, and I think that's when the hotel stays came into play. I always knew how far I could go before it was just too much. On my typical day where I didn't have to stay the night, I would usually get home around, believe it or not, anywhere from like 8 p.m. to 10, even sometimes 11 o'clock at night. Yes, leaving the house at 6 a.m. and getting home late night would mean that it was normal to work a 15+ hour day. However, when I did these long days, I didn't go out the next day. That's the truth. I had to skip it. I was, back in my mid-40s already, had broken up my back, smashed it up lifting weight. And so, I was always in a lot of pain the next day after doing those long days of sitting and driving. My work week looked like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday were usually like field days. Again, unless I had to stay overnight, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday would end up being my office days, and sometimes I would reverse those. Also, keep in mind that this was years ago, pre-electronic application process. So back then, every single one of my applications were written by hand and faxed up. Yes, old pen and paper. So basically, I would do one day in the field and the next day would be my office day where I did all the paperwork, sending up the applications, doing service work for my existing book of business and my clients, calling the carriers to see what applicants were approved as applied for or not, and that would be considered my rest day. So I would try to relax as much as possible during that day, that way I could be ready for the next day, the field day. Of course, and then in the evening, later that night, I'd start the process of printing out my schedule and the leads and put the addresses into the GPS all over again for the next day. So there is one other confession that I need to make. It's not something that I ever hid, but it actually did make a huge difference. My wife, Mariana Massey, was also selling final expense insurance. So when the clients couldn't see me on my scheduled field days, our appointment setter would just book them up for Mariana to go see. Usually, on Tuesday or Saturday, or maybe like the Thursday and then on the next Tuesday. Basically whatever day they couldn't see me, they would see her. And likewise, no, I'd never counted her production towards my own. She always went out in the field 1 or 2 of those long travel days per week and usually placed around an additional $100,000 of annualized premium every single year. So yes, between the two of us, we were writing around $500,000 of AP every single year. And this went on 4 years. One more little confession. After working this type of schedule for just 2 years, as you can imagine, I did start to get burnout and had to back off a little bit. So by my, I want to say 3rd full calendar year of heavy production, I went down to 2 field days. However, even with this schedule, I was still writing around $300K per year on my own pen and was the #1 producer of the year with Security National Life during 2 of those lighter years. So I was #1 with 5-star 1 year, 2014, I believe, #1 final expense agent with them full-time. And then 2015, I was still full-time with Security National Life. I was their #1 agent. And then even part-time, I still ended up being their #1 agent for the next 2 years. That's how much production I was writing. Oh, and I almost forgot to share something else. When our lead vendor had excess leads, and we're talking like a lot of them, and they were sometimes out of state, there were times when I would buy them at a discounted rate and do road trips. I would even fly out to some of those areas and rent a car and work those leads for like at least 3 or 4 days in a row. So yeah, I didn't just sell face-to-face in Florida. I've done it in Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi too. Now, let's talk about today. And what's interesting is that you don't have to do the kind of mileage that I did. No more hotel stays, no 15-hour work days, no more running through cars by putting heavy mileage on them. As a matter of fact, if you've got the right personality, skill set, work ethic, and talent, you might be able to write just as much business as what I was doing, what I was writing back in the day. And here's the kicker, without having to leave your home. That's right, 100% remotely. Exactly. With the technology that we use at our agency, you can have like 20 to 30 appointments every single day of people expecting your call about buying final expense life insurance. Pretty sweet. Yeah, no more driving around. It's all done remotely and from the comfort of your own home. And what we do is we set up our agents' ad systems. We customize the landing pages with their photograph and their information so that the client knows exactly who's going to be calling them when they set the appointment. Or sometimes the clients will actually hit the call now button. And what we do is we run and manage the entire system for each agent individually so that the agents can just concentrate on doing their job, selling. For a copy of the appointment setting super file that I mentioned back at the beginning of the video, just email me at doug@ufesonline.com. If you'd like more information on our remote final expense sales platform, just shoot me an email at that same address. As always, when you put the needs of your clients first, everything else will usually fall right into place. Get out there and do whatever it is that you have to do something good for someone else today. Happy hunting.